On March 22, 2022, in Loves Park, Illinois, a Boone County sergeant is accused of violently attacking a woman he was dating inside his own home. The allegations include punching, kicking, and strangling her. More than 4 years later, on July 2, 2026, the former sergeant appears in a Boone County courtroom for sentencing. By this point, a jury has already found him guilty in April, so the question of guilt has been decided. But the case takes an even darker turn because his ex-wife has also testified about their past relationship. Her testimony describes a disturbing pattern of controlling and violent behavior that allegedly began years before the incident at the center of the criminal case. Her account doesn't involve the charges he's being sentenced for, but it gives the court another perspective on his history. Now, as sentencing approaches, the focus shifts from what happened that night to the larger pattern revealed through the testimony. And after years of consequences being avoided, the former sergeant is finally facing the judgment of the court.
Now, during the course of your 10 years as a co-worker, did you develop enough information to be able to talk about the defendant's character for truthfulness or untruthfulness?
Yes, ma'am, I feel pretty comfortable with that.
And what is your opinion based on the 10 years of being a co-worker?
Mr. Hartman's not truthful. He's not reliable. He's not trustworthy. He was not by any means a very competent police officer. Well, I think back to when Mr. Hartman was removed from the school resource officer program. He was a school resource officer at Elgin High School.
You had a conversation directly with him about what you just testified to, about his unreliability, his not being truthful?
Yes, I mean, maybe not in those exact terms, but yes, I had a conversation with him about his inability to do quality police work, his inability to be trustworthy, his inability to be honest, yes.
And what was his reaction to that?
I always remember this. His reaction was simply, nobody's ever told me this before.
How long had he been a police officer at that point?
Probably 10 years.
Did you believe him when he said nobody had ever told him that before?
No, ma'am, I did not.
Can you tell Judge Tobin what you recall about that conversation back in April of 2018?
Sure. I remember that Angie Hartman came in and wanted to report kind of years of both sexual, physical, and emotional abuse.
And do you remember any of the details that she told you?
She brought with her a journal, which she detailed the abuse in. She talked about things like Mr. Hartman forcing her to have sex with people she didn't want to have sex with. If she refused to have sex, he would beat her. He tied her up or handcuffed her. He did things like make her drink nail polish for not going along with him, nail polish remover. At one point, she talked about how he had taken used toilet paper out of a toilet bowl and forced her to eat that toilet paper.
And can you describe her demeanor when she was telling you these things?
She was very upset. To me, she was someone who had just finally had it. She couldn't take any more of the abuse. It was probably about an hour-long conversation. And me being someone who was a criminal investigator for a number of years, I've investigated a lot of different crimes, including sex crimes. I thought I thought she was telling me the truth. I believed what she was saying.
Ultimately, Mr. Hartman stopped working for the Elgin Police Department at some point, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know any details about him leaving the department?
Again, I was not privy to those conversations at that time. I was not a commander. It's my understanding that he left, under the kind of the guise of there's an investigation going on, and it was, leave before the department took employment action against him. So he decided to retire.
So the investigation into Angie Hartman's allegations was still ongoing when he put in for retirement, correct?
It's my understanding that was the case.
And based upon the people that you know who've been diagnosed during the course of your supervision of Mr. Hartman, did you notice any characterization or any characteristics of him suffering from any type of PTSD?
No, I've never observed anything myself, no.
How, based upon your representations of what a poor example of a law enforcement officer, how did he get promoted, if you know?
Ma'am, I have no idea, but I can tell you the rest of the agency was shocked. Yes, at that point, I was a supervisor. I've been a supervisor for several years. There was discussion amongst a lot of supervisors about the results of the list tests. He was a midnight shift sergeant the night that this incident happened. and he was on duty.
And so do you have specific concerns about his response to that incident?
Again, personally, I was not there on scene. I've seen the videos of the body camera from the incident you're talking about. The lieutenant in charge who ultimately shot and killed that woman in that tragedy is a close friend of mine, and we've had a lot of discussion over there about what happened. You know, if you talk to him, a big reason why that happened was the incompetence of Sergeant Hartman and how he initially handled the scene.
So Sergeant Hartman was the first at the scene and sort of in charge.
He would have been the sergeant in charge. He'd have been in command of the scene when he arrived.
So his supervisor felt the need to go out based upon what he knew about the defendant's ability to be a police officer.
Right. Again, according to Lieutenant Jensen in the conversation we've had, he would say that the only reason he was out on the scene that night was because at the time Sergeant Hartman mishandled the entire scene.
This officer-involved shooting, can you describe, to your knowledge, what occurred?
Started off as an attempted check on welfare. The Cynthia Williams fled the officers. Eventually, she crashed her car on I-90. She refused to come out of her car. In some different ways. There was a lot of officers that responded to that on I-90. Her car was pinned in.
Officers.
A lot of officers ended up responding to that. Her car is pinned in between two cars, so she can't go anywhere. She refuses to come out of her car. She's armed with two knives. You know, there's some talking through the window. She doesn't come out.
The talking through the window was Mr. Hartman, who was conversing with her, trying to get her to come out of the car peacefully.
Yes.
Okay. And she didn't come out peacefully. She came down and brandished the weapons, the knives.
She did not. This went on for an extended period of time. Eventually, Ms. Williams lights her own car on fire from inside. There's an attempt made to rescue her out of the car, and she comes out of the car with two knives and at the police officers, and she's shot and killed by Lieutenant Jensen. Lieutenant Jensen eventually, again, in his words, from what he's told to me, responds to the scene because it's been so poorly handled up in that point by Sergeant Hartman. When he gets on scene, he takes control of the scene, and he's responsible and controlling the actions of the officers. You know, and then again, at some point, you know, they're trying to rescue her out of the car. She started the car on fire. But again, I mean, the exact words that Lieutenant Jensen has said to me, almost verbatim, is if Sergeant Hartman hadn't screwed it up.
At sentencing, the court hears about conduct that was never part of the original criminal trial. A coworker describes what he was told about a past shooting investigation, while prosecutors explain why that information can still matter at this stage. This isn't a second trial, and Hartman isn't being charged over that shooting. Instead, the judge is allowed to consider broader evidence when deciding an appropriate sentence, including information that may reveal a defendant's judgment, credibility, or conduct over the years. Prosecutors say the earlier incident was independently investigated and ruled justified, but they believe the surrounding testimony helps the court understand who Hartman was beyond the conviction in this case. The real question now isn't whether he's guilty, that's already been decided. It's how much weight the judge should give everything revealed before sentencing.
He hired me originally as a nanny.
I'm sorry, he hired you as a nanny?
As a nanny, yeah. Because his wife was working at the brothel at the Bunny Ranch in Nevada, and he was working overnights.
At that time, where did he work overnight?
He worked for the Elgin Police Department.
So when you first met Janelle, how old were you?
I was 18 when I met her.
If you recall, how old was the defendant when you met him?
I want to say late 30s. I think we're like a 21-year age gap.
When you cared for Janelle as a nanny, did you live at that Love's Park home?
I did. I was a live-in nanny.
Did there come a time when your relationship changed with Mr. Hartman and you became more than a live-in nanny?
Correct. He would go into the room and like touch me, fondle me, and try to engage into sexual activities with me.
Was any of what you just talked about, was that consensual on your part?
You know what? At that time, it was weird. At that time, I didn't have a voice.
You didn't have what?
A voice for myself. When it came to someone that I thought was protecting me because he had a badge. 2 weeks right after my first son was born, he said, we have to go get married because I was pregnant at 19 with our first child. That time I didn't know what I know now as a grown woman, educated with a career.
Prior to May of 2017, did you become involved in sexual acts with other people that you didn't want to be?
Correct.
If you recall, when did that start?
So the first time that started was when he was claiming this guy was a teacher at the ECC college in Elgin. I don't remember his name. And I was like in my room at the Loves Park house, which was the nanny room. He came in and he brought another guy. He started touching on me and I felt uncomfortable. I started crying and I left, and he got mad at me because I left. I didn't want him to touch me. I've been molested as a, and that kind of brought me back, and Rob knew about that. That would actually turn him on, knowing that it was throughout our whole marriage. So from 2011 till 2017 when I left him.
So how often would he do that?
It would be like twice a week or like 3 times a month. He would tell me that he needed that to distress him.
To de-stress him?
Yeah.
What would happen if he didn't want to have sex with these random people that he brought in?
He would hurt my privates. He will make them bleed. So embarrassing. He like would make me have sex with him regardless. He will pull me from the hair and get me out of rooms to go have sex with men that I didn't want to, and he still freaking beat me. I'm sorry, but he's a disgusting pig. I'm sorry. He threw me on the beanbag because I was still talking to Andrew because I had feelings for him. And that's when he threw me on the beanbag, and he really hard. I passed out. He said, "I will fucking kill you if you cheat on me." And he always hit me in the head every time. Or he would pull my little hair bun and drag me.
Like drag you around the house?
Around the house, yeah.
By your hair?
By my hair.
How
Yeah.
often did that happen?
I seriously feel like it would happen like twice a month that we got into it. But it was always over. I didn't feed his mom, or I didn't take her this, or I didn't do this for his mom, or I didn't go have sex with somebody that he wanted me to have sex with, or do something that he wanted me to do. Like I was his freaking sex slave.
You talked earlier, Angie, about when you refused to have sex with other people, the defendant would hurt your vagina. Do you remember testifying about that?
Yes.
And how often would that happen?
That actually happened, I want to tell you, once. It was at the Loves Park home, right by in the doorway of the basement stairs going down and the second floor.
Did anything physically abusive or sexually abusive happen in Jamaica?
Yes, he strangles me during our trip to Jamaica because I didn't want to have sex with a Black male during that time. And I remember he took pictures of, I just recently saw all the SD cards that I had from the trip. And there's a lot of pictures of me just sleeping naked. I'm passed out, drunk, after like having sex with who knows how many people at the trip.
When you were having sex with
He would be right there watching a recording. And then I do have a picture where his hand marks are in my neck from when he strangled me in Jamaica. He would always threaten me with my kids, that I'm gonna take your kids, I'm gonna take the kids, because he was a sergeant and I was just a postal worker.
So on July 15th of 2017, do you remember talking with an officer or lieutenant named Jensen?
If that was the time when he went to my parents' house with Rob in uniform, then yes.
Can you tell the judge what happened on that day?
So on that day, I was at the hospital because I had a panic attack from everything. The next day, I was on Valium. The doctor prescribed me Valium. I went back to my mom's house because I stayed in a hotel in Huffman Estates because he went looking for me that same night at my parents' house with the uniform on in Elgin, flashing his light in front of inside my parents' house. My dad was there. I wasn't there. And he called me through the phone to say, "Hey, Angie, come home. Like, you're okay," and whatever. And then the next day, when I came back from the hospital, Jensen came with Rob and another Sergeant Rick, and they came. I remember Jensen's like, "Oh, you have to give the boys to Rob." That's what he said. You have to give the boys to Rob. Mind you, I'm heavily on Valium because of everything that had just happened. And I'm like freaking out. I'm like, no. And everyone's like, yes, you have to give them up.
So in April of 2018, is it accurate that you talked to both the Elgin Police Department about your husband's crimes and the Boone County Sheriff's Department?
Correct. I thought they were giving me the runaround because I spoke to Chief Anna Lally directly regarding the incident, but obviously it's clear that she covered for him too because they both went to the same academy. They're really good friends, but it was denied by Judge Young. What his words to me were, "You're only doing an order of protection because you're filing for divorce." So I went 10 years without protection.
Did anything negative happen in the hot tub?
Yes.
Do you remember when it was?
Yeah, it was towards like June 2017. I caught him talking to one of his ex-girlfriends. I don't know who she was, but Nadia, that's her name, Nadia. So I had already previously caught him talking to her, but that day I looked at the messages and I confronted him about those messages and how he was cheating and stuff like that. That day he got so mad because I confronted him. He ended up taking me into the hot tub. He put my head, he not look at me like that. He put my head under the water, took my clothes off. I was naked outside. He locked the door. And I was like, let me in, let me in, let me in. That's when I'm like, you know what? I'm out. I'm going to die today.
During the course of your relationship, did he ever threaten to kill you?
Yes. Yes, he did.
About how many times?
He threatened me once and then he did try to kill me that. I felt like he tried to kill me that day at the hot tub because he knows that my biggest fear of dying is drowning.
None of Angie Hartman's allegations involved Alexis Young, and Robert Hartman was never separately charged over them. But this sentencing hearing is about more than one isolated incident. Illinois law allows prior domestic violence conduct to be considered in certain circumstances, especially when it helps establish a pattern and its value outweighs the risk of unfair prejudice. The court, not the jury, must weigh that balance carefully. Here, Angie's testimony gives the judge additional context about Hartman's past behavior and whether his account of the charged incident fits a larger pattern. It isn't being used to convict him of a separate crime. Instead, it helps the court understand the circumstances surrounding the offense before deciding the appropriate sentence. Two different relationships, two different women, but testimony that the court says can provide important context.
Always use that whole Cynthia thing that he's messed up, he's not messed up, I'm messed up. I take medicine every day for what he did to me.
Did you call the police yesterday about 4 o'clock?
I did.
And why did you call the police?
Because his vehicle was parked down the street from where I live.
Do you remember at about that time in mid-July 2017, talking to the Elgin Police Department and telling them that Mr. Hartman was never physically abusive with you?
I do not recall that. I never said that. I feel like that was between them two because now I know how the Elgin Police Department really is when it comes to their employees. They cover for them. I just kind of, at this point, it's very clear that because he was an officer, respected, they didn't take it serious because Elgin didn't do anything and I feel Boone County didn't do anything either. So during that time with the whole shooting, he used that as FMLA. So he wasn't working so he could have more overnights with the boys. So he started to use the Cynthia situation to not go to work anymore and to fight me for custody in court.
I'm here today only by the grace of God, and I have to acknowledge his presence in this room. I thank you so much, and I ask everyone to open their eyes today as they hear my truth. I ask these things through your Son, Christ Jesus' name. Amen. I appear before you today, Your Honor, not only as a victim in this case, but as an advocate for justice. You heard during the trial many of the horrific details that I endured at the hands of Robert Hartman on March 22nd, 2022. But what you did not hear was that Robert had put his hands on me hundreds of times before that and beat me more times than I can mentally remember. I met Robert at church when I was 25 and he was 45. I would later find out from Robert himself that he recorded me before I ever laid eyes on him and showed me a video of us walking down the stairs after service. A video he played off at the time as a coincidence and fate bringing us together. A video I can now see as a predator stalking their prey before engaging them. Within the first month of dating Robert, he had bought me a car, introduced me to his children, asked me to move in, and been intimate with me. After falling in love with Robert very quickly and meeting his children and mother, I would later come to find out that Robert was still legally married. Robert said both of his exes were crazy and he had full custody of his daughter, and he never allowed me to speak to his exes. I would also later realize that he was a predator with pattern. I told my family very little about what Robert did to me because he was a police officer and threatened me, and Robert still showed up at church, recorded my baptism, and tried to talk to me. After endless texts and calls, I forgave Robert and took him back after he made me believe his outrage toward me was my own doing. This continued throughout the entirety of the relationship. Robert isolated me from my family and friends. I left Robert so many times, and every time he would show up somewhere I was, pressure me to talk, use threats and intimidation, send flowers and gifts, and always use the children as leverage to get me back. While I was with Robert, he punched me repeatedly all over my body, head, and face. He slapped me repeatedly and covered my nose and mouth, telling me to get ready to die. He strangled me with both hands, more times than I can count, and almost every time we had intercourse, strangling me was part of it. He told me he was going to kill me and that he would get away with it, and even if caught, would not serve much time. Robert forced me to go to a building with his gun in the center council, riding with us the whole way, and proceeded to force me to allow more than 5 men to sexually assault me while he watched and got off. He provided me with alcohol and weed on the ride there. This abuse continued for the duration of the relationship. Robert would force me to go out and find someone and act as if I was cheating on my boyfriend and let a stranger inside me. He ordered me not to use the bathroom afterwards and said he wanted me to come straight home and that I could not shower. He would then have sex with me without my consent and tell me he wanted to see whose sperm could get me pregnant first. He told me in his own words that he wanted me to get pregnant by someone else, not tell the person and raise the baby as his own. I was terrified of Robert and believed everything he had ever told me he would do to me if I did not comply. Soon after that, Robert sent me a picture of a coffin on March 4th, 2022, while I was at his house with our son. It was early in the morning and I had no idea why he sent it. I reacted with a laughing emoji, afraid of his reaction if I did not knowing he was telling me he was going to kill me. I truly believe Robert Hartman intended to kill me, not only for refusing to comply with his criminal sexual demands, but simply because I knew about them. I had a miscarriage and had life taken from me after Robert beat me so badly near the end of the relationship, and I went through it alone at my mother's house. I live now somewhere between constant fear and faith, with the defendant being out of custody. My world is much smaller, and I don't have any friends. I don't trust letting any man get close to me or my children. I get tested regularly at the doctor to ensure I still don't have any STD or AIDS from being sexually. I would directly like to thank you, Your Honor, for protecting my children and I over the last 4 years, specifically for not removing my son as a protected party in my criminal order protection against Robert Hartman. I firmly believe you care about children and injustice, but every minute the defendant is out of custody, my children and I are less safe. Please help protect us, as well as any potential future victims, from further harm by the defendant, Robert Hartman.
Alexis Young's statement carried weight because she wasn't simply another witness in the room, she was the person directly affected by the conviction. Victims once had far less opportunity to speak during sentencing, but that has changed significantly over time. Under Illinois law, crime victims have rights to be present and heard during important stages of a criminal case, including sentencing. That means Alexis had the opportunity to tell the judge how the offense affected her, regardless of whether the prosecution needed her statement to prove its case. Angie Hartman's role was different because she was a witness describing a separate relationship, while Alexis was the victim in the case being sentenced. Her words don't determine the punishment by themselves, but they give the judge another important perspective before making that decision. The sentence is ultimately the judge's call, but Alexis was guaranteed a voice in how that decision was reached.
Thing is that I do want to at least raise, I know there was a reference, a short prayer, things of that nature. By no means would I ever stop somebody from expressing their own religious beliefs. At the same time, I can assure everybody here that God does not take a part in making decisions I have to make today.
I love people. I care about people. That's who I am. And I've worked really hard on my mental health as I've been a police officer. And you made a reference to compartmentalizing, and that we all try to do that. I took my mental health seriously, and I still take it today. I take my medicine. I go to therapy. I've signed up for therapy still too. I am asking for probation so that I can take care of people that are depending on me so that I can make amends. My mental health and regarding that shooting that happened on March 12th, 2018, her name wasn't Williams, it's the Cynthia Clemens. And it happened not 20 feet away from me, it happened 6 feet away from me. I knew after that, I couldn't have that same feeling and impact. I didn't sign up to watch people be murdered in front of me or killed in front of me, justified or not. It was not a pleasant experience to see. I was in shock. I suffered from PTSD from it, I was Officer Robin. And that's gone. I'm just dead.
Judge, my recommendation is that the defendant be sentenced to the Illinois Department of Corrections for a substantial period of time. Just listening to him for the last 15 minutes, he still just does not get it. It was all me. After listening to Alexis Young's victim impact statement, and after listening to his ex-wife, Angie Hartman, talk about the things that he did to her, there was absolutely no, I'm sorry. It was all me, me, me. This is the worst time in his whole life. Well, those women went through the worst time in their lives for years. This defendant loves people. That's who he is. He loves people when they do exactly what he tells them to. That's when he loves people. I don't doubt he loves his kids. I don't doubt he loves his mother, but the love he has for them does not overpower the effect of the crime that he committed and the crimes that I've proved up in aggravation, Your Honor. Prior to the trial, he was seeing his boys, Angie's children, every other weekend, even though they had a 50-50 custody situation since 2019. At that point, he was seeing the children every other weekend. That's all he could muster to spend with those boys. And it was after he was found guilty that all of a sudden he's Mr. 50-50. He commits this crime in March of 2022. And it's not until June 29th of 2026, according to the exhibit provided by Mr. Braun, that he completed the Partner Abuse Intervention Program assessment. Not the 26 weeks. He could have done the 26 weeks of domestic violence counseling at any time without even telling us. I mean, he's a police officer. He knows these things. He's hooked into the community. He knows these things. But did he do it in 2022? No. Did he do it in 2023? No. I could go on. He didn't do it until after he was found guilty because he doesn't care. He certainly does not care about the domestic violence that he's wreaked upon both Angie Hartman and Alexis Young. He doesn't care. You heard his former boss testify that he's absolutely unworthy of belief, that he's untruthful, that everybody knew it, nobody could believe he had become a sergeant, that it might have had something to do with chief points or something. Well, it sounds to me like when Angie Hartman went to the Elgin Police Department, that the chief at that time must have liked Mr. Hartman. The defendant is manipulative as anybody. The testimony from Angie Hartman shows us that. The victim impact statement shows that. People's Exhibit number 1 that shows all of the injuries that Alexis Young had in the past based upon him beating her shows that he's one type of character, and that's a violent man. There's a 20-year age difference between he and Alexis. There's a 21-year age difference between he and Angie. He certainly had a type, and they were naive, and they trusted him, and they were young, and he victimized them, and he manipulated them. Let me skip to aggravating factors because I want you to take into consideration that the duties of his office were obliged to prevent the offense or bring other offenders to justice. Although we know from his lieutenant that he was a horrible police officer, he was a police officer nonetheless. It is an aggravating factor that police officers are not supposed to strangle their loved ones. They're not supposed to threaten to kill their loved ones. They're not supposed to tell them that if you call the police, nobody will believe you because I'm a cop, I know people. I mean, it's despicable. You heard several similarities between Angie and Alexis's hell in living with this man or being in a relationship with this man. He'd take their phones away and hide them. He'd drag them both around by their hair. He would talk all the time about being a police officer.
And people in law enforcement on the front line, they face danger and peril every day. They have to live with that stress, deal with that stress, try to cope with that stress. And I submit Mr. Hartman was simply not able to do that. He's been diagnosed with major depressive disorder, recurrent anxiety disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder. And I think it is important to look at Dr. Breese's letter. And I think that it's important to note that beginning early in 2019 until 2022, that period where Ms. Young testified she endured the abuse that she did, he was not being seen by Dr. Breese. For whatever reason, he had an untreated mental health condition.
First of all, I really find highly credible, based upon the way they testified here in court today, the testimony of both his prior coworker and supervisor, as well as his ex-wife. Just reading the demeanor of them in court, I find their credibility to be high. As analyzed in this, this is tied into the event that occurred back in 2017 or 2018, the shooting out there on 90, primarily PTSD. However, much of the evidence I heard here today started well before that. And while there certainly might be some other mental health issues that were not diagnosed by Dr. Lisa that would explain some of the behavior over the past 10 or 15 years, only a portion of that time was after the triggering event that she's tested or that she identifies. Starting with, at a very young age, she befriends the defendant, becomes a live-in nanny, and ultimately kept prey. And from there, she endures not quite a decade of abuse. Then the torch is passed. Alexis becomes the next one. And again, the weight given to that's a little bit different since there wasn't live testimony, but ultimately this shows a very similar pattern of behavior between two people, but with two victims who really didn't know each other or have any real reason to mimic stories between each other. Ultimately, this is the only thing that stopped the 10 to 15 years of abuse to significant others, to people who should be the closest people in your life, was the arrest. There was never going to be a break. There just would have been a new victim. This was a hell and a half of a 10 and a half year 15-year run of abuse to two different people unrelated that culminated in this offense. Based primarily on the nature of the offense, I'm sentencing you to the full 7 years in the Department of Corrections. Keep it together. To be served at 85% truth in sentencing, followed by 4 years of mandatory supervised release. So you will be remanded. And to the folks that are here, please wait until he's been removed before showing any expressions.
On July 2, 2026, Judge C. Robert Tobin III sentenced Robert Hartman to 7 years in the Illinois Department of Corrections after a jury found him guilty of aggravated domestic battery for strangling Alexis Young in his own home in 2022. 7 years is the maximum sentence for the charge, and Illinois law requires him to serve at least 85% before mandatory supervised release begins. But the sentence only addresses what happened to Alexis Young. It doesn't erase the separate allegations made by Hartman's former wife, Angie, about years of troubling behavior that were never separately prosecuted. The evidence presented during the case gave the court a broader picture of Hartman's history, including testimony, corroborating details, and records considered during sentencing. In the end, Hartman's conviction came from what happened to Alexis. But the bigger question remains: what might have happened if Angie had been believed years earlier?